This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen. Content presented on the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent views of the Whole Care Network. Always consult your physician for medical and fitness advice, and always consult your attorney for legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Have you ever met anybody that has caregiving on their bucket list of things to do in life?
Beyond caregiving, how do we care?
We also have to care for ourselves.
How do we treat friends, family, strangers we meet?
Forget it.
How do we heal? The physical, social, financial, spiritual.
Hello.
By creating healing ties. Tying it all together like a bow tie. With your host, Christopher McClellan, the bow tie guy.
Well, greetings, everyone. It is the bow tie guy, Christopher McClellan, for another episode of Healing Ties 2.0 on the Whole Care Network. As you know, on the Whole Care Network, we are all about story sharing and resources because we believe it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. And our common cause is supporting caregivers before, during, and after caregiving ends. And as you know, we're celebrating National Family Caregivers Month with the reboot of the popular Healing Ties podcast. Now, I'm the one that thinks it's popular, but I've had a few people tell me that too, with our 30 and 30 podcast to celebrate National Family Caregivers Month. And just as important, the soft launch of our new Whole Care Network website. So when you get a chance, please visit our new website. Well, you got to go to the old site to visit the new site, but you'll figure it out at wholecarenetwork.com. And you'll also get an opportunity to meet Bo. That's because Bo ties things together on the Whole Care Network. When you see Bo, you're going to get it 100%. I just know it. And during the soft launch, we'll be asking our listeners to provide us with feedback on the new site so we can continue to build our site where you can easily find your favorite podcasts, favorite blogs, and videos. Oh, and by the way, you'll be able to search content on the Whole Care Network via our 4 pillars of care: physical, social, financial, and spiritual health. All the content will be categorized by one or all 4 of those categories. So, and be on the lookout for our new YouTube channel featuring live shows, our streaming 24/7 radio station, and a few other changes coming to the Whole Care Network in 2021. Now, well, enough for me. Let's get on to our guest. My guest on this episode of Healing Ties is a certified caregiving consultant and certified caregiving educator, Theresa Wilbanks. Theresa is a dedicated caregiver to her 99-year-old father and is the owner of Sustainable Caregiving. Theresa works with family caregivers on both the emotional and practical challenges of caring for an aging parent and is passionate to help each family caregiver balance the trials and tribulations with care and compassion. And it's my great pleasure to welcome Theresa Wilbanks to Healing Ties. Theresa, we're doing it. We're finally doing it.
Yeah, Christopher, thank you so much for having me. I am just so glad to be here after listening to you for so long.
Well, I appreciate that. We've kind of know each other, but we do know each other because we have this genuine care about caregivers. But I know a little bit about your background, but let our listeners know from you why you're doing and how you're doing it.
Yeah. So, as you said, I take care of my dad. I have to give credit to my husband. We're co-caregivers. And we've been doing that for about 7 years on site. And, the pandemic kind of changed things, but we just had a virtual 99th birthday party for him about a week ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, that was awesome. And so 7 years ago, we moved back from France and I started caring for him. And it was going smoothly in the first few months. And then it kind of went off the rails, as he needed to stop driving and some other things happened. He had a stroke and so a hospitalization, rehab. And after I got through that period, and then even a few years later, I looked back and I realized it didn't have to be so hard. I mean, it was so emotionally challenging and I got into a place of burnout. And when I looked back and saw that if I had handled some things differently, I had learned some things along the way, it would have been a different experience. And I just felt, compelled to help other family caregivers.
And I think that's kind of why we get into what we're doing, because we're in the midst of this caregiving experience. We learn quite a bit. We have days where we wish we could have known something beforehand, but that propels us to be advocates as we move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And getting that period of burnout and then working out of that and looking back also was really helpful. It was painful and yet extremely helpful.
Well, I've got a number of things I want to ask you about, but I'm going to start out right about, I want to know about living in France and your decision to come back. I'm sure that, you did it to take care of your father, but I'm sure that might have been a hard decision.
It was hard. So we'd been over there 7 years and loved it. And I talked to Dad probably every other day, conversation about this, that, everything. And at some point he had a fire and he had lit candles. He did that every day. He fell asleep. They burnt through the tray that he had them on into the dresser and it set the place on fire. And from a distance, I wasn't getting the whole story. I wasn't hearing exactly what had happened. Bit by bit, it came out that it was a lot more significant than what he was sharing. And I think that's when we decided we needed to kind of start our exit strategy from France and move back. And we did. And it was hard. We were really enjoying ourselves over there. But, it was the right thing to do because soon after that, he was diagnosed with AFib and had a stroke. And as I said, that, we really needed to be here and the timing was perfect.
Well, and now you're here and you're just launching a course in November on Sustainable Caregiver. Can you tell our listeners about your course?
Yes, and I need to share with you an update. It's the same content. The word course, I think, was kind of intimidating, especially to caregivers who are so busy. And the last thing I wanted to do was add another to do on the checklist. So it's just simply 12 strategies for sustainable caregiving.
12 strategies.
Yeah.
Very good.
And same exact content. And so what it is you'll receive 2 strategies a week to your inbox. And you can kind of read what they're about. And then there's some information on how to apply them seamlessly into your day. Again, I don't want to add more stress to the family caregiver. And these are strategies that I delved into bit by bit. I learned, what worked and what didn't. So these may or may not work for everybody in every situation. But, if they don't work, you can set them aside. And maybe down the road, as the caregiving experience changes, something will click and something will work. And you kind of figure out your own formula with them. But that's what it's about. And I just want to give back to the community because I know that, caregivers sacrifice a lot and they're doing it, without a lot of, they don't get a lot of recognition. They certainly don't get pay. And I just wanted to give back.
Isn't it? It is a great feeling to be able to give back to caregivers is from your own personal experience, because it's kind of like our motto here on the Whole Care Network. The best resources are usually from one caregiver to another.
Yeah, that's so true. And, I kind of talked this month because it's National Family Caregiver Month about just even listening to another caregiver and validating their experience. And when they feel heard and understood, that from caregiver to caregiver, I have this dream that we have an opportunity to maybe set each other up with like a peer caregiver counseling type situation, because just being able to talk to somebody maybe once a week or once every other week who gets it and understands would be fantastic. I could see that developing across the country, just, friendly conversations between caregivers.
Friendly conversation. It's our stories that bind us together. And through those stories, we find three very important components: validation, resources, and respite. And that's why we're all doing what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I know I've got a little insight. I want to see if I know you talk about some superpowers.
Yes. So superpowers. Oh my gosh. When I look back and think about the things that I really could have used in the beginning,
Mhm.
they weren't on my radar at all. Boundaries, mindfulness, compassion, self-compassion. And when we have
Mhm.
compassion for ourselves, we're better able to give it to others. And then forgiveness. And they just all work together. And, the boundaries help protect us from burnout. And in the beginning, we're kind of mixing, we have folks helping us, they're in our homes, it's an intimate relationship. And we don't realize that we need to set boundaries. And then with our care recipient, if we haven't had those conversations or we haven't thought about how much is too much of our time and our energy to give before we get help, then we can find ourselves these boundaries being crossed and we're angry and frustrated and feel resentful and didn't even see it coming. And then the mindfulness helps us recognize when that boundary was crossed. And that's something that I've cultivated and practiced over years because that wasn't a place I was. My mind was constantly on the move. And I found that by calming it, I can recognize when those boundaries are crossed, can protect my compassion reserves, and then more easily able to forgive.
Now, you just said something that I've not heard that in that phrase, compassion reserves. Can you
Yes.
expound on that a little bit? Because I think that's an awesome, I mean, I understand what it means, but I'd like if you could expound on that, because we tap into our reserves
We
all the
do.
time.
We
Yeah.
so do. Yeah, as caregivers, and again, you start off by helping a little bit and you feel that, it just feels good to be giving. And then all of a sudden we're giving, 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 and we don't realize that we've just given so much of ourselves that we've depleted our reserves. We almost, stop feeling compassion for maybe our care recipient, others we might come into contact with ourselves. And, I started to recognize that. Like I used to feel compassion for everyone. And all of a sudden I only had enough. All I could do was just, manage myself. And and it was because boundaries were crossed. I like to
Mhm.
say, if you imagine yourself as, you're sitting on this cloud and you're holding this blue heart, and that blue heart is your compassion. And then
Right.
you see, the boundaries of the cloud, they fluctuate and they move, they're flexible. They're your boundaries. And as long as you're within those boundaries and you protect them and you maintain them, then you're protected and you're protecting your compassion reserves. So it's just an image I like to keep in my head as I start to feel like things are getting out of whack. I'm going to just sit in my happy cloud with my boundaries protected. Yeah.
I
Protecting
love
my
this.
compassion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because boundaries get skewed while you're in the trenches of caregiving because you're so focused on caring for somebody else that all of a sudden you realize, oh goodness, I'm late for work. I've missed this day. I've all these things that we just kind of think that they're normal part of our day when really they're not.
And you've given up a lot. You may have stopped that yoga class because, you have more doctor's appointments for your care recipient. And then you start to realize more and more if you've given up the things that are protecting you and your life, then you're right. They get out of whack. And to get them back in order it's a process.
It takes a while, and
It
that's where
takes
the
a while.
resentment comes in, and that's where, oh goodness. So one of the themes that's come up quite often as we do the 30 and 30 podcast, and I'd be interested in your take on this, is the not only the concept of self-care, but how hard it is for caregivers to recognize that is really an important part of their caregiving journey. I'd be interested to hear your feedback on that.
Yes, you're exactly right. Because as you well know, we are giving up, more and more of our time, and it feels good and it feels right. And then all of a sudden we realize we've given up everything. And you start with just your basic well-being and making sure you get to your doctor's appointments and getting enough sleep and nutrition. But then, you move on to the things that restore you. And if, you're
Right.
someone who used to love to travel and you can no longer travel, think about that was your passion. How can you incorporate some of that into your day? Maybe it's just 5 minutes learning a new language for the next place you'll go. It may be 5 years down the road, but just things that you can do, whether it's sitting with a cup of tea, meditating, journaling.
Mm-hmm.
It's different for each person, and we have to redefine it maybe as the experience changes. And we also have to figure out how to fit it in those little blocks of time that we have available.
And did you have a favorite thing that you like to do? Was it journalism or journaling, or what was your stress relief?
Nature is my top go-to. So I'm able to get out and paddleboard in the mornings and watch the
Oh, very
sunrise.
good.
That's super helpful. Journaling, definitely. I could write for hours, and it's a stress relief. Yeah. And meditating has become, it's a new, I always feel like we're taking gifts away from this experience that we'll carry with us forever.
Mhm.
And I am learning to, calm my mind. And that's going to, I think, help going forward. Yeah.
And if I understand correctly, you have a book coming out in January.
It is. And it's been delayed a bit. My editor is also a caregiver. And so she's had her care recipients been in the hospital twice in the last short bit of time. So it is coming out at the first of the year. And I'm very excited about that. And it's all about the strategies for sustainable caregiving. And it combines these strategies that we've been talking about that help with the emotions. And then it adds in also the strategies that help the more practical matters, like how to find help. What help might you consider?
Right.
And what help is helpful? That's just that would be one chapter of the practical strategies. So I'm really, again, excited about being able to share all that I've learned and just hope folks can take away from it what will help them.
Isn't it great to be able to give back?
It really is. Yeah,
it's really and that's what binds all of us together is we may not know each other personally, but we have this intuition about what the journey has been. Even if our journeys are different, we still get what's going on. And to be able to give back, I think that there's no greater gift than to be able to give back. Well, I think this is a great time to take our break. And, I have to forewarn you, as I do with all our guests, we put you on the spot. We want to know one fun fact about you that we haven't learned today and our listeners would like to know. And so you've got to put your thinking cap on. Okay, you're listening to Healing Ties on the Whole Care Network. We'll be right back.
Tomorrow on Healing Ties 2.0.
And a lot of our work and our training is really around like the real physical environment, the real things that are going on in people's homes. And it was important before the pandemic, and it continues to be important. People, 1 in 3 over 65 are going to fall. Well, just because you're home and you're isolating and all of the other parameters around how our lives have changed, that hasn't changed. One of the things that has changed, though, is if somebody takes a fall, how badly do you want to go to the emergency room? Hi, I'm Fritzi Grodion with Age Safe America. Please take this opportunity to listen to the podcast on the Whole Care Network and Healing Ties 2.0 about Age Safe America, about aging safely at home, and just a generally wonderful conversation with our host, Chris McClellan.
Join us tomorrow and every day in November for 30 shows in 30 days. Healing Ties 2.0. Available at thewholecarenetwork.com/Healing Ties and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Well, welcome back, everybody. And we are continuing our delightful conversation with Theresa Wilbanks. And Theresa, as you know, it's been standard procedure here on our 30 and 30 reboot of Healing Ties that we ask our guest one fun fact that you'd like to share with our audience.
Well, I think that we've alluded to the fact that I'm sort of a nomad on hiatus, but the fun fact is that my husband and I owned a Volkswagen T5 camping van while we were in France. And it's the one that the top pops up and you sleep up in the top. And we traveled all over Europe in that van. We stayed for weeks in the snow in Austria while we skied, and we made the most of our time there with this van. It was true freedom. It was awesome.
That, I have a strong desire to retire in Europe, especially Spain. And when I hear this story, it just kind of, I get kind of goosebumps about projecting what could be in the future. And you did it.
Yes. And we were in Barcelona in our van. I can remember it clearly. It was just wonderful staying a little bit outside the city, took public transportation in, and that's what we used to do. And you met the most, wonderful people. And I'm so excited that you want to spend, your retirement there. That is fantastic.
Yeah. Well, actually, with the goal is hopefully, you can work really anywhere now. I'm hoping by this time next year, we'll be doing the Whole Care Network from somewhere around the Mediterranean Sea and around Barcelona. So that's kind of my goal. And I'll share this with you. And I'm not sure I've talked about this on very much on our shows, but I learned through my caregiving experience, and now believe it or not, that's 6 years. Richard's been gone 6 years, but I recognized about a year ago that my life had really been devoid of goals. I had been in survival mode for so long. And even after he died, it was like survival. The grief was hard. And about a year and a half ago, I took a transatlantic cruise and just kind of fell in love with the area, met some folks over there. And it's kind of like I came back and realized my life has been devoid of goals. I have a goal to continue to grow the network and retire and live in Europe, and especially Spain. And it's made quite a difference in my life. And that's why when you're talking about boundaries and all these emotions and feelings, this has just connected with me 100%. I can't thank you enough for sharing all this.
Oh, thank you, Christopher. It's been so great talking with you. Yeah.
And I know where I'm going to come and get some tips on living in Europe now.
Yes, definitely.
I got to ask, do you think you'll ever go back?
Oh, I would love to go back. Yeah, I know. I see, there's a caregiving opportunity on the horizon with my husband's parents. And then after that, we have so many friends in France and actually all over Europe. And I would love to do 6 months there and 6 months back here and just see how that works out.
We're going to have a lot of conversations because that's my mindset too. And Theresa, with the stories that you share and the work that you do, you are certainly someone who's creating healing ties all around us. I can't thank you enough for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And before we let you go, please, I'm kind of out of step here, but before I let you go, please let our listeners know how they can contact you, all your information on the internet, because I want people to be able to be in touch with you.
Thank you. Yes, sustainablecaregiving.com is the website. And if you go there, you'll see links to all of the social media, everything from LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. I have information out there on all those sites. And then also sustainablecaregiving@gmail.com. Please, I would love to hear from you. And if you want to go to the website and sign up for the strategies, they are free and you'll get 2 to your inbox every week. And there's also a Facebook page where we can interact and you can reach out to me anytime.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Theresa. It's great to spend the time with you today.
Thanks, Christopher.
Okay, well, that does it for this episode of Healing Ties. And as you know, I'm your host, Christopher McClellan. You might know me as the Bowtie Guy. I've created a life to love after caregiving ends by sharing stories, resources, and being with awesome people like Theresa Wilbanks. Healing Ties is produced in the posh studios of Odd Box Production in downtown St. Louis, Missouri, and is part of the Whole Care Network. Check out the soft launch of our new Whole Care Network website and be sure to visit Bo. You got to meet Bo. And be sure to subscribe to Healing Ties wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. We'll see you for another episode of Healing Ties, tomorrow, as we continue our 30 in 30 days of podcast to celebrate National Family Caregiver Month. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye for now.
Ciao.
This is WCN, the Whole Care Network. You talk, we listen.